Joe, welcome to the show. You are percussion and assistant timpani with the TSO. So to paint a picture for our listeners, you're one of the few in the orchestra who gets to stand. You're at the back, off to the left, moving around, hitting things. Now, please elevate my crew description. First of all, just how many instruments do you play?
Oh, man, that's a question that comes up often. And the answer, strangely, is almost an infinite number, especially when we get into some of the contemporary repertoire. We took a piece on tour that had a conch shell in it, all sorts of different sound effects. But on top of that, then there's this sort of standard, more orchestral percussion instruments, which I always throw the number like maybe there's 12.
That includes like cymbals and mallet instruments.
Yeah, I mean, the triangle, the tambourine, snare drum, the bass drum, it's kind of endless.
Yeah. Now, you joined the TSO in 2018. You're fairly early in your career, and yet you've really gotten around. Tell us about your path to the TSO.
Yeah, sure. I started playing music at a pretty young age. I was about 6. I started playing the guitar, and I really liked it. I did it for about 10 years, but I wasn't a great guitar student. On top of that, I was kind of a hobbyist drummer, and I played drums in the marching band. By the time I was about 15 or 16, I started to get really interested in music theory, and I realized, oh man, I think I want to be a conductor. Like, I don't know if I could do that, so maybe I'll just be a high school music teacher, like a band director. And so I consulted my current band director, who basically said, that sounds great, but you have to go to college with a primary instrument, and guitar can't be one of those. It has to be a band instrument. And so I thought, all right, well, maybe I'll just try to take percussion lessons. And I found an awesome teacher in New Jersey, and he totally kicked my butt. And it turned out that I was a lot better at percussion than I was guitar. He said, I think you could make a career as a percussionist. And I ended up getting into the Manhattan School of Music, and I ended up staying there for 6 years. I did my undergrad, and I did a master's degree. After that, I went to Chicago for 2 years to study and got what they called a professional diploma, which was basically I was just playing in ensembles and taking lessons and practicing. And then I got a position with the New World Symphony in Miami, which a lot of TSO people are alumni of. And I spent 1 year there, and then during that year was when I was appointed my spot with the Toronto Symphony.
Now, I am always impressed by the kind of precision that percussionists need, and also courage, because every sound you make is so exposed. And also being furthest away from the conductor, I know that can create a time lag, which is, of course, the last thing a percussionist wants. You don't want to be late. Is anticipation a big part of your job?
Absolutely, and I think it's one of the most challenging parts of the job. You're trying to connect with someone who might be like 70 feet away from you, and just as you said, you can't creep in with the section. When you hit the triangle, you hit the triangle, and people can hear it. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge.
Now, I firmly believe that every role in the orchestra has an unseen art that maybe even your colleagues aren't fully aware of. Would you say that that is the secret art of orchestral percussion, or is there something else that you would also name?
I mean, I would say that would be one of them, but I also think the art of needing to switch instruments so much, and this is especially a unique issue for me because I play timpani and percussion. I'll have a program where I'm playing contemporary work on the first half where I have a vibraphone and a bunch of bongos and like a funky setup, and then that piece will end, and immediately I walk over to the timpani and play a Beethoven piano concerto, which is like a totally different feeling of music, not to mention totally different instrument, different spot on the stage. The intermission will happen and go set up for the second half, which is it's a Tchaikovsky symphony or something, and I'm playing a cymbal part. And I think that that's one of those percussion-specific things that is really challenging, but also a huge reason why I love what I get to do.
Right, the versatility appeals to you, obviously.
Absolutely.
Now, I have to ask two things. One, how do you feel about having a music director in Gustavo Jimeno who comes from your world, the percussion section?
Just in general, it's so exciting. It's intimidating when you're sitting there going like, yeah, that guy is better than me at this instrument.
Yeah, you did have a pretty high up job there.
Yeah, and really the best part about it is that he understands us. First of all, it doesn't feel like a percussionist on a podium. He's focusing on the big picture in such a beautiful way. But then he'll ask us things that we can relate to. It'll challenge us, but it'll feel like he actually understands, which is not always such a common experience.
That's amazing. Okay, before I let you go, I have to ask you, just how much technique is really required for the triangle? Is it harder than it seems?
Absolutely. It's super hard, yeah. When I was studying, my teacher, he has this exercise that you do, play 6 identical notes in a row. And you're like, all right, whatever. You play one, he's like, okay, so that's your note. Play 5 more, just like that. You go to play the second one, it sounds completely different.
Oh,
and
wow.
the reason is the triangle is a metal dowel that's bent to a triangle, and so it's round, which technically means that there are infinite points in where you can strike it. There's a feeling you have to get in your hand that's very relaxed, where you can hit the instrument really gently so that the instrument rings and that you get the same overtones coming out every time.
Okay.
Because there will be moments, there's a moment in Petrushka that comes to mind where there's 4 solo triangle notes, like right in a row. If they don't sound the same, it sounds really silly. And it's a true solo. The whole orchestra drops out and you play ding, 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 dum, bum, 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 bum. Right. On top of that, trying to play the instrument in more expressive music where you're trying to just get the placement, you're trying to time all of these things and get the stroke just right to make sure the instrument sounds good. And it's tricky. It's very fun, actually, a very expressive instrument, believe it or not.
Well, that was very enlightening. We all know a lot more and have a lot more respect for the triangle, which is a great thing. Thank you so much, Joe, and looking forward to seeing you there at the TSO.
Yeah, thanks for this.